Hey everybody, find the boys on Facebook by searching The Longbox, a month in comics, and follow them on Twitter at The Longbox MIC.
Hello and welcome to the Longbox, the road to Infinity War. So the gauntlet has been laid down. It's 18 films in 18 weeks. I'm going to watch and discuss every MCU movie ready for Infinity War. This is a challenge that I recommend all our listeners to kind of watch along with me. It could be like an interactive, like watch the film, listen to the podcast. So first one is Iron Man 2008. So this is like the start of something really big. I don't know if people realise that when watching it way back when, but this is a studio attempting something that's never been done before, and that's like a cinematic universe. And they were a studio that has never even made a film before. So a little kind of background on where Marvel were at the time. So Marvel Comics decided that I think they were a bit annoyed with selling off their property, the rights to their film properties, and decided to go it alone, basically. Decided to make their movies themselves. They'd already sold off the X-Men and Spider-Man and Daredevil, and so they decided, you know what, instead of selling our rights, let's make a studio, become a studio and make our own movies. So to do so, they didn't really have the financing to do that. So they actually went to a Wall Street firm called Merrill Lynch and borrowed about $500 million to get this project off the ground. And for collateral, they actually put up a bunch of the rights to a bunch of their characters. And I'm not just talking about the movie rights. These are like flat out the entire rights to a bunch of characters. I think those characters were Ant-Man, the concept of the Avengers, Black Panther, Captain America, Cloak and Dagger, Doctor Strange, Hawkeye, Nick Fury, Power Pack, and Shang-Chi. When I say the concept of the Avengers, I assume that they weren't giving up the rights to anyone that I didn't mention on that list, like the Hulk and Iron Man, etc. But I doubt they would have be allowed to use the Avengers at all if they had actually, lost these characters to Merrill Lynch. So they this was a big risk for them, to be honest, for them to put up. They would have not owned the rights to these characters anymore. So they must have been pretty confident with what they were doing. So then, after that, the next issue is the casting of Robert Downey Jr. in their first movie, Iron Man. That wasn't exactly well received by Marvel Studios, the newly formed Marvel Studios. I think Jon Favreau really had to kind of twist the arms of the powers that be to get him. I believe he got paid nothing to do it as well. That was kind of part of the bargaining tool, that they could keep the cost of the movie down if they hired Robert Downey Jr. I might be wrong about this, but I remember hearing that he was actually uninsurable at the time due to kind of his his shenanigans and his reputation. And rumour has it he was also paid less than Terrence Howard, the guy who plays Rhodey, to do this movie. I wouldn't worry though, Longboxers. He did make sure he banked on his other appearances. Also, the film was shot without a full script. A lot of it was ad-libbed. I've heard stories, Jeff Bridges in interviews saying that he had to go back to his trailer and call his writer friend to get ideas for lines for them to say in certain situations, because Jon Favreau wasn't very much like, yeah, it's fine, just ad-lib it, it'll be absolutely fine. Gwyneth Paltrow wasn't particularly comfortable with this either. She couldn't find the appropriate kind of responses to Downey Jr., who naturally was brilliant at it, as you can imagine. I don't think any of this shows in the script, though. Well, in the script, I don't think any of this shows in the actual film. And in fact, I think it's its strength, like the relationship, especially between Pepper and Tony. It comes across because of the natural pauses and the sheepishness and the shyness between each other, which comes across as obviously they're trying to think of the next thing to say or ad-lib. And I really think the movie is stronger because of not going in with a full script. And it's the same with Jeff Bridges. I feel that his relationship with Tony Stark, Stane's relationship, is, I know he looks menacing and he's obviously the villain because of the way he dresses and the way he looks, but I for the first part of that movie, I honestly think he's his friend, and that I think is again because they're trying to be charming, and the ad-libbing kind of seems to help that. to be honest, when this movie first came out, I didn't care. I really didn't. I felt it was, I heard what was happening, and I thought this was really kind of scraping the barrel. This was Marvel going, right, we've got nothing else left. What else can we do? And so I really, really just didn't care about it. I then watched it after there was a bit of hype about it. I watched Incredible Hulk first, actually, and then thought, actually, I'll go back and see what was all the fuss about. And I was a little bit shocked. I mean, I loved it, obviously, but I was a little bit shocked that it was so well liked by the critics, because there is a structure issue in this movie. I believe there is anyway, and I'll get onto that a little bit later. So onto the movie itself. What kind of struck me as being unique about this movie is it's actually an origin movie through and through. And I know what you're saying. It's like, what you're talking about, most first time out comic book movies are origin movies, but I don't know. This waits until the end, until he's actually fully Iron Man. He's not actually quite Iron Man until he says, "I am Iron Man." Unlike, the superhero movies before, like Spider-Man and Daredevil, and even actually Superman, they're quite good examples of the films that are interested in telling their origin, but they also want to tell another story. So by halfway through the movie, the origin's done, and then we're on to the kind of their first mission, or their first time out. It kind of feels like two separate films, where I think this is one fluent origin movie for Tony Stark. What is interesting about watching this kind of recently, after in hindsight, is this film doesn't actually do too much world building too much, considering their plan was to do a shared universe, and that's evident by the end scene in this movie, and kind of lines that kind of set up sequels. There isn't, they don't kind of hammer at home. There's no kind of like, oh, we haven't seen heroics like this since Captain America and things like that. They're not like name dropping or trying to set up threads for other characters. They're just interested in telling their story and their origin to Iron Man, to the point where if this didn't succeed, or they didn't want to make any more, this would feel quite at home being a standalone movie, not connected to any shared universe, obviously bar the after credits scene. Apparently there was an early draft of the script that mentioned that Tony was the person that designed the Octo arms from Spider-Man 2 for Doc Ock. That is a really nice little Easter egg, but I'm really glad they didn't put that in there, because that would make this world so messy, considering how big this has got now, and obviously hindsight with a new Spider-Man, etc. I just think crossing the streams like that was a good thing to avoid. Right, on to my structure issue that I mentioned before. I think the movie does meander shortly after Tony gets back to Malibu, like after all the cave stuff. He comes back and does the press conference, and after that the film kind of meanders. It's kind of just Tony building an Iron Man suit, which I get, but the film doesn't really give a clear indication what he's doing and why. It's not clear how him building this Iron Man suit is going to kind of make amends, because he pledges to kind of make amends for all the bad he's done, but it's unclear in the script how those two things connect. And even when he does use the suit to go and destroy his weapons, because Stark Industries is dealing under the table, that seems more of a reaction to the situation rather than his intention from the beginning. It doesn't seem like, oh, he's building the Mark II suit for that exact mission. And on top of that, at the same time, the film lacks a villain at this point in the movie. We see the Ten Rings leader gather the Mark I suit after Tony's left the cave. But what's he doing with it? He can't power it or anything, so there's no kind of thread there to what he's doing. It's only when Obadiah is revealed to be the bad guy that the threat then picks up again. So yeah, I just feel like that 20 minutes or so of the movie is a lot of fun, but it kind of stills the movie, and we don't really know where it's going. Apparently there was a first draft that Favreau was working on where the Mandarin was the villain, and he was the main person behind the captor. So that would solve the absence of the villain problem, because that means he would be working opposed to Tony from the beginning, and it would have worked through the script. Where this version of the movie has one villain and then the second, and I understand that Obadiah is the constant threat because he was behind the kidnapping, etc., but at that point in the movie you don't realise that, so you're kind of just like, okay, what are we doing here? Are we just hanging out? I don't know, it just kind of felt like a TV episode rather than a focused movie. However, I must say this has become a rule almost at Marvel, where you kind of sacrifice time with the villain to spend more time with the hero. You just got to make sure that you cast that villain well, which they right off the bat they have with Jeff Bridges. I think he's absolutely great in this. There's always complaints about the lack of strong villains in Marvel, but I'm completely happy with Jeff Bridges in this. And as I said before, it's not that I didn't see the twist coming, because obviously he is advertised by his look and his demeanor as the villain, but his relationship with Tony is like so good and so tight. I kind of almost didn't want it to be that way. I kind of really liked him as Tony's like partner. I'm also really glad that this film focuses on the spectacle of Iron Man, like the way that the suit is fitted and the way it all clicks together. We spend a lot of time, what's the word, kind of watching big close-ups of the way the chin strap kind of clicks to the side of the mask and all the hooks like condense onto it. It's just a lot of fun, and just the visual of being Iron Man, and that in the sound as well. Like, you got the pulse blast, like I don't know, that's now ingrained in, like 10 years later, ingrained into us. That sound is, as geeks, it's almost like subconscious. It's like you got the Godzilla roar that we all know instantly when we hear it, the lightsaber turning on, and now the pulse blast. Like it's like embedded into the zeitgeist of the cinema going now. Like it's really ingrained, and I think that's because a lot of time and effort was spent on just like how much fun is the idea and the visual of the visual and obviously sound of Iron Man. Jon Favreau gets a lot of credit for the shot inside the helmet, where you can see Tony's face, or Downey Jr.'s face, while he's in the Iron Man suit. And obviously that is the reason, not the reason, but a big reason that this movie works is because we can still see Tony and his emotions, and we get Downey Jr. to act even though he's in the costume. Like, that was a stroke of genius. However, I will say, like, everyone seems to praise him for inventing that shot, but I must say that I noticed, or it was pointed out to me, should I say, Blades of Glory was made the year before, and there's a scene where Will Ferrell he's doing some ice show, and he's in some big costume, and they do the inside shot, so the camera's inside the helmet with him there. So yeah, Favreau technically isn't the first to do it, but obviously the first to make it famous, or to apply it in such a way that people applaud. Kind of a bit of a trope here as well. Like at the end of the movie, the final battle is shot in the dark. I think this is kind of Marvel, the first movie out. They didn't want it to look kind of, I don't know. I just saw it as it looks fine. I'm not going to complain, but it's not the imagery that we know of. These Marvel films now. They're kind of brightly lit and shot in the daylight and the spectacle of that. But I think first movie out, this kind of saves on CGI costs. Like, you can hide the seams a little bit better, I believe. That's probably the reason they did it. But it looks absolutely fine. I love the fact that for their first time out for a third act, or for a final battle at least, it doesn't overstay its welcome. It's not like other superhero movies that may have a 45-minute two CGI characters smashing against each other. It doesn't have that type of thing going on. So yeah, I just wanted to mention the fact that this scene isn't in keeping with what we see in later Marvel movies, but fair enough if that was the way forward. And I must say the CG in this movie in general looks great. Iron Man, the Iron Man suit just looks beautiful. It's become iconic. That image of the gold and the red is absolutely amazing. And like watching it through this time as well, I assumed that all of the Mark 1 stuff in the cave was practical. Some of it isn't, but it doesn't matter. It looks really good. The fact that it's taken me this long to really look at the scene and go, oh, hang on a minute, that is kind of that is a CGI mold, etc. Yeah, I think that their first time out of making this movie, it looks great. They haven't overstretched themselves or anything like that. It just thumbs up from me. So then, nothing really much to say bar the after credit scene. It may be the greatest after credit scene in a Marvel movie. Nick Fury turning up and kind of just dropping the ball. The Avengers, just saying Avengers was just like, oh my god. And yeah, again, like there's been candidates for best one, but I honestly think that is the best one. It just kind of, maybe it's just because we weren't used to it at the time, and it's just the impact that had. But just the that to just set up a wider universe, and the fact that the Avengers was coming, it's just like I just get giddy just thinking about it now, and we're about to hit Infinity War, and just trying to remember how I felt when I saw that like 8 years ago. Okay, so while I was doing these podcasts, I'm obviously going to rank the movies, but I'm not going to do like a star system where I give a movie 1 to 5 stars or anything like that. What I'm going to do is I'm going to rank them on the road to Infinity War. So they're going to be ranked within each other. So as this is the first one, I can then officially say that Iron Man is the top film so far out of the one that I've reviewed. Okay, next week I will be reviewing The Incredible Hulk, also 2008. Don't forget to check out any of our other shows. We'll be reviewing some comics and perhaps some other things at the time. So if you've enjoyed this, check out our other podcasts. If you're looking for any of our archive stuff, I'll put a YouTube link at the bottom of the blurb for this podcast. But until next week, I've been Doug. Read more comics.